Hey there, and welcome to another Tale from the Tanks. Today I want to share my experience with a recent power outage with you. It threatened the health of my fish tanks, and with the information I will provide, hopefully you can manage something like that should it ever happen to you. So let's dive in. So, depending on where you live, power outages might be a regular occurrence, and then you probably know what to do to sustain life in your aquarium when it happens. Or it is something that strikes out of the blue as a rare one-off that you thought only happens to other people. In my case, it was a bit in between. Here in Australia, even in the big cities, power lines are typically strung along roadsides on poles, and the wildlife here, cockatoos, flying foxes or possums, fancy themselves as conductors between the wires and occasionally plunge whole suburbs back to the Middle Ages as the power fails. And then there's heavy storms that uproot trees that fall across power lines with similar effect, but longer recovery times. I was well aware of the dangers for my fish tanks from those occasions, but figured a few hours without power is not the end of the world for a set of well-established tanks. When I got into breeding fish, that outlook changed, since newly hatched fry are of course a whole lot more sensitive to changing conditions such as temperature or water chemistry. And what really brought home to me the need to have a continuity plan in place was a power outage that was caused by a failing underground power line, which left us without power for over 24 hours. Solar panels and battery didn't help on that occasion either, since it was winter, rainy, the outage started in the middle of the night, and the battery drained into the house heating before we even noticed that something was wrong. Of course, that kind of outage had the worst possible timing. So, it's worth being prepared. I call it the Fishkeeper's Continuity Plan, or FCP. What is our goal? To keep everything and everybody living in the tank alive, of course. And by everybody and everything, I mean bacteria, plants, shrimp, fish, and whatever else you're keeping in that glass box. So here we were at 1 a.m. in the morning, the house at 15 degrees ambient temperature, that's Celsius. Outside it was below 10 degrees, and heaters and filters for the tanks were out. What to do? Well, as they say, don't panic. If you know that the power will come back within an hour or two, it's probably going to be okay. But when can we ever be certain about that? So we need to think about what depends on power in your aquarium: oxygenation, heating, filtration, and light. There's even more involved for saltwater fish keepers, but I cannot speak to that for lack of experience. Oxygenation is usually provided from the gas exchange on the surface of the tank, aided by flow from the filter outlet or air stone agitation. An easy manual replacement is to simply scoop up some water regularly and drop it back into the tank from 10 to 20 centimeters above the surface. A better way is to have a battery or USB powered air pump at hand, such as these things here. What about heating? If you keep cold water fish, then that is of course a non-issue unless the room you have the tank in will go, say, below 10 degrees in a hurry. For tropical fish keepers, keeping the temperature up is more of a concern. Depending on the size of your tank, the water temperature will drop faster in a small tank than in a larger volume of water. My fluval reflexes, for example, went from 26 degrees Celsius to 20 degrees in the space of a couple of hours. To preserve temperature as much as possible, wrap your tanks in blankets or towels. We have these old moving blankets at hand for the purpose. This at the very least slows the temperature loss down so the fish do get less of a shock if they get a bit cold around the gills. You can also try to warm some water on a gas stove or gas barbecue, fill it into a plastic bottle and float that in the aquarium as a makeshift heater. Do not pour the hot water straight into the tank, because that will damage your fish. Run an air stone off a USB air pump, as I said before, to ensure the water mixes around the container and the water surface is moving for oxygenation. The USB power can come from a power bank, such as the one you use to power up your phone, or even just a laptop with USB port that is powered while the computer sleeps or hibernates. Just watch what the overall water temperature does so that it doesn't fluctuate too rapidly. It is the rapid changes in conditions that will stress the fish. What about filtration? Depends on the kind of filter. Sponge filters or other filters within the tank are probably more resilient, but the bacteria in canister filters and other external filters will start dying off as oxygen is depleted due to a lack of flow. This is where backup power comes in. I invested into this device here, which can deliver 80 watts over 10 hours, keeping filters running. I do not use it continually during power outages, just half an hour on, half an hour off, and you can use a timer for that to keep the filter bacteria happy. These backup power units are not cheap, mind, and it may not be needed if you just have to worry about one smaller tank. In that case, something like this, which uses the same batteries as my power tools, might be enough. You want to make sure, of course, to keep these devices charged so they're ready. I also use a USB air pump such as this one to keep the water circulating in the tank itself to avoid dead spots where ammonia could start building up. So the fish are protected from a temperature shock and water quality is kept up. Anything else? Do we need to worry about the lighting? Short answer, no. Fish are quite okay with being kept in the dark, unlike humans, and plants can easily handle a day or two without specific aquarium lighting. I would avoid feeding as much as possible during the outage so oxygen is not depleted through the breakdown of not eaten food and the blanket cover around the tank is not disturbed. So your emergency kit for power outages to tide over your fish tank could look something like this. The master test kit is to check up on water parameters as time wears on, and you need some chemicals at hand. I use Prime to detoxify if the measurements get out of bounds. Once the power comes back on, it's a good idea not to restart the filters straight away, because depending on the length of time and how successful your measures were to keep the bacteria alive, there may be dead bacteria in there, and that could cause an ammonia spike in your tank if you flush that into the tank now. So check your water parameters. If anything's off, do a water change and use something like Prime to detoxify the nasties. And if the outage exceeded a few hours, it might be worthwhile giving the filter a clean before switching it back on, since otherwise the dead bacteria it contains may cause a subsequent ammonia spike in the tank. The temperature will come up slowly with the heaters being back in service, so that should take care of itself. So in conclusion, power outages can happen, even in a first world country. Good preparation can tide over your fish tanks until power is restored. I had no losses during our outage, thanks to being prepared. This video forms part of a series to tackle all the various crises that can befall a fishkeeper and how to deal with them, the Fishkeeper's continuity plan. I hope this helps you to be ready. Please like and subscribe, and I see you for the next Tale from the Tanks.